Hello and welcome back to East Coast Fiberglass. In today's video we're going to show you how we took an old skateboard like this and turned it into a resin coated wall art like this. First we started by removing all the non-slip finish and then all the old graphics. The board needed some repairs, so we fixed the delaminated ply by mixing up some epoxy, injecting it into the void and clamping the plies back together. As you can see here, we've wrapped the ends of the clamps in tape or polythene, and this is a good tip to prevent the epoxy gluing your clamps to your board. We then mixed up some wood flour with the remaining epoxy until we had a smooth peanut butter-like consistency. And this was used to fill the holes and other voids around the board. Once cured, the repairs were sanded down. And then we added a coat of epoxy to the whole board to seal it. And once cured, we then sanded this coat. If you're applying bright or light coloured artwork, it's a good idea to apply white pigmented epoxy, and that'll give you a neutral colour and prevent dark areas of the timber showing through the paper. When cured, lightly sand and then remove any dust and wipe down with acetone. For our graphics, we used a simple Windows editing tool, in this case Windows Paint, to make our image long enough to fit our board. You might be lucky enough to find an image long enough, or you might have to do what we did here and stretch the image to fit. This particular board was the equivalent length of just less than 3 sheets of A4 paper. Most boards will easily fit within the width of an A4 sheet. Once we were happy with our printout size, we cut off any white borders and checked that everything lined up okay and fit the board. The image was then glued on using Timco D3 PVA wood adhesive. PVA-based wood adhesives harden to a more sandable finish and are much better than standard PVA craft glues or other types of thinner PVAs, which can tend to dry a bit too soft to sand. We then used a soft foam brush to flatten the paper and make sure there were no air bubbles. Don't use anything hard to flatten the paper, as it might tear easily when wet. When dried, we trimmed off any excess paper and sanded the edges. Scuffing the edges gave it a nice retro finish, as well as ensuring that the ends were blended with no paper sticking up on the ends. It's a good idea to give the graphics another light coat of PVA, which will reduce the paper's porosity and stop the epoxy darkening the image and showing up any glue residues on the seams. We didn't do this on our deck, and as you can see, the glue lines are showing as we wet the area. The imagery remained true to the original printout where there was PVA residue, whereas the rest of the image without any PVA darkened. Once dry, lightly sanded and cleaned, we're ready for our resin coating. The room temperature should be around 15 to 20 degrees C, as well as conditioning the epoxy to the same temperature. Here we're going to use Gurit's Ampro 115 clear epoxy resin. This resin and hardener is measured at the correct ratio by weight using digital scales. Once mixed, the epoxy is poured onto the board, and using a clean foam brush we spread the epoxy out evenly, adding more epoxy if required. When we've achieved an even coating, we use a handheld blowtorch, which helps thin the epoxy slightly, breaks the surface tension and pops all the tiny little air bubbles which may be on the surface. Don't use the blowtorch when the resin is curing and the drips are slowing down, otherwise you'll increase the risk of ripples in your coating. The next day, the epoxy should be hardened with a glossy finish. However, if there's any evidence of dust etc. on the surface, these can be cut and buffed out. Thanks for watching. All the materials shown can be found on our website at ecfiberglasssupplies.co.uk, as well as all the relevant safety and technical data sheets. Or just search for East Coast Fiberglass. Bye for now.